Mana kind of feels like my house at this point, right? Like
Mhm.
when there's a lot of people in there, I'm like, why are all these people in my house? Like it's like home. I don't want to eat there all the time because I'm like,
Yeah.
well, it's kind of like eating at home.
Welcome to Nerdlandia.
Welcome to Nerdlandia, where we're baltering, not faltering. I'm your host, Emily Case Buskirk. In case you were wondering, baltering means dancing without much grace or skill, but having so much fun you don't even care. I love that word so much that I actually made the working title for this show The Balterer's Handbook. Throughout the first season, I've had such a great time nerding out over so many different things, and I hope you've received this as an invitation to do the same. Thanks for joining me in this space where we can all learn together and support each other along the way. Alright, enough of the mushy stuff. Our guest today could not be more perfect to round out Season 1. Alma is the owner of Mana Games in downtown Lincoln. It's a board game cafe, but also so much more. We talk about its origins, how our team created a welcoming and inclusive space for all of its guests, and also what board games we're into at the moment. Alma, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, that's great.
I thought that Mana Games would be the perfect guest for this, so I'm
Awesome.
so grateful. Thank you so much. First
Yay.
things first, I saw that Mana has over 1,300 board games. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. When we opened, we were just under 900, I believe, almost
Wow.
900 games when we opened 2.5 years ago, and we just hit 1,300 last month. So yeah, we've grown a lot.
That's insane. How do you source that many board games and even store them?
Yeah, it's been a cool process. We do have someone, not quite an investor, but someone who kind of loaned games to us at the beginning, or like leased games to us at the beginning. As I have 600 games at home and I don't play them, but I want to see you guys be successful and get started. So that's how we got a lot of like our initial collection of a lot of those like kind of staple board games, more like newer staple board games, I guess. So my co-owner Sam, basically our whole like vintage collection, a lot of our kids and family collection, that came from his personal collection. There's a few from my personal collection. I definitely wasn't as prolific of a collector as he was when
Mhm.
we started out. Then we actually have had a lot of donations as well. I would say that easily over 300 games at this point have been donated to us.
Wow.
It's not always like, oh, I didn't like this game, so I'll give it to you. A lot of times it's people saying, hey, I love this game and I never have time to play it at home. So I figured you guys and your customers would get better use out of it. So that's really cool. We've gotten a lot of kind of expensive games that way,
Mhm.
games that would have been difficult for us to invest in at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we buy games a lot too. So we do some Kickstarters, especially ones that are picking up a lot of interest, people are really excited about. And of course, we've got several distributors that we work with to get some newer games as well. Stonemeyer has a program for businesses to get
Yeah.
in copies of their new games, and we have a couple other distributors and distributing warehouses that we can buy new games pretty regularly too. So yeah.
That's amazing. The times that I've been there, you see all these games and it's amazing, but I just had no idea until I started doing a little bit of research that it was like over 1,000. Like that was just mind blowing. So,
Yeah, and to your point about storage, not all 1,300 are on the shelf. We do have some kind of overflow of games.
okay.
You can request them. We've got a list, but they don't get picked up very often, and so we save some space that way just to keep the main library a little bit more organized and easy to
Yeah.
access. We also have some games that are top shelf games, not necessarily for price reasons, more because they are extremely heavy and full of components, and if it
Uh,
like fell on somebody's head, they would be injured. So
yeah.
like you want to come grab like Zombicide and all the 10 expansions of Zombicide we have, like that's fine. They just live in the back. So
That makes sense. I'm glad you're looking out for people's safety.
Yeah, yeah. It's crazy how heavy some of those like really hefty boxes can be.
Yes, definitely. Do you have a favorite board game at the moment?
I would say the favorite of the new games we've got recently is a game called Malem. It's a little cat astronaut game.
Love that.
Yeah, it's cute. It's Polish made. It is cooperative. I'm a big fan of cooperative games. I
Me
don't get a
too.
whole lot of time to sit around and play games.
Mhm.
We do have some scheduled time every month where we try out either new games or games that are maybe coming up for a learn to play that we want to be more familiar with. And unfortunately, I don't get to join in that very often. So when I do, I really like to play like collaborative, cooperative games with the management team. And so that's the one that, a lot of games I try once and I'm like, yeah, that was fun. And I don't circle back to games a lot. But Mlem is one that I've pulled out a couple times and been like, oh, I really loved this. I want to give this another go. And then at the Great Plains Gaming Festival in March, we got a game called Panda Royale from
Mhm.
a designer that was a company that was there that had a few of their games. I thought all of their games were fun. Panda Royale, it's a dice kind of drafting game. You draft like which die that you want for that round, add it to your pool, and then at the end you are rolling those dice. And so it's a little bit of kind of like press your luck with like a drafting kind of strategy. I just thought it was like a really unique game, and also it accommodates up to 10 people, I believe. And there just aren't a lot of like non-party games that you can really accommodate that size group, and so
Mhm.
that was exciting to me, to be able to recommend a game like that to groups of larger size. It feels like they're all just like Cards Against Humanity.
Yeah, that format is so
Yeah, yeah,
ubiquitous.
and it's not fun. Lots of people love it for sure, but for me personally, like I like that there's an option for larger groups that's a little bit
Yeah.
more strategy based. So I've been enjoying that
Yeah.
one as well and recommending it a lot.
Well, were you saying, like, the drafting, it sounds almost like Yahtzee-ish, or,
It
am
is,
I, like,
yeah, yeah,
okay.
exactly, yeah.
Cool. And I definitely wanna try out Mlem, that sounds amazing. I
It's fun.
also love cooperative board games, and they're kinda hard to find sometimes, so I
Yeah.
love having that recommendation. And are there any particular games, board games or card games that kind of ignited your love for tabletop gaming?
I wasn't when we initially started this concept and this idea of like opening a board game cafe in Lincoln. I definitely wasn't the board game person.
Mm.
I'm the cafe person. I've managed cafes for a long time, and that was the knowledge and experience that I brought to the business. And we started running gaming events before we had a brick and mortar, and so I would say there wasn't like a particular game that really like got me into it so much as like just the community aspect of playing games with people. Like I'm pretty down to like pick up any game as long as it's not like a 2 hour learn. There's
Yeah.
a lot of games like that are really popular, and I'm like, I just can't. The bees in my brain that buzz around and make me not be able to listen. Like, I can't do, an hour of teaching. And so,
Totally get that.
really, just like the community aspect of learning a game together and meeting new people and having fun is like what really got me excited about the hobby in general.
Yeah.
And I would also say that like it's actually not a tabletop game, but I would say that like playing Dungeons and Dragons and like
Oh,
doing
yeah.
role playing games, that did kind of like open me up to tabletop gaming in general, because I was in a group that met every week and we played D&D. And then so like one of the first board games that I feel like I was like, "Oh, this is a game that I love and can teach to others," is Lords of Waterdeep. And Lords of Waterdeep is like in the D&D realm. It's like
Mm,
characters that are present
mhm.
in that world, and some like locations that are familiar to me. So I would say that like Dungeons and Dragons really was like the gaming experience that kind of opened that up for me.
Yeah, it's super cool to hear that it's more of the communal aspect and getting together with friends and having a fun experience together.
Mhm.
Most of the people I know who love, gaming and love that kind of environment, like, definitely just kinda love playing games, you know, and so sort of like got into
Yeah.
it that way.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that's super interesting and cool. I totally know what you mean too about not wanting to spend a ton of time on learning games.
Yeah.
It's because I love like seeing all these different kinds of games, but I think I definitely have like a threshold of like how much I'm willing to invest like mentally into learning a new game. But I think if you have
Hmm.
like somebody who's good at explaining it and who understands the game pretty well, then I'm kind of willing to like sit with it and be like, just help me with my questions
Yeah.
here and help me through this first playthrough. And yeah.
Absolutely. And I would say, like, there's absolutely a place for those games, and there are players for those games. We try to keep things a little less crunchy in regards to the library as a whole. We use Board Game Geek a lot, which is it's kind of like crowdsourced info in terms of like how difficult a game is.
Yeah.
And not only like, okay, this game does accommodate up to six, but like what's the ideal number of players? So there's a lot of crowdsourced info because Board Game Geek is really popularly and widely used. And so I would say, like, on a one to I think they do like a 1 to 5 scale for difficulty.
Hmm.
Like we have hardly anything over a two. And just because they're kind of niche once you get past that. I do think it's
Totally.
interesting. I believe the most, or at least one of the most difficult games in the library on that scale, that 1 to 5 scale, is actually chess, which
Oh, yeah.
it's easy to learn, difficult to master, I guess. But
Totally.
yeah, or like the Game of Thrones board game is up there because it's just crunchy is the only word I have for it.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
well, like you're really gonna be in the thick of it learning this game. But and there's groups that love them, like Gloomhaven and those games that are like multi-session, like whatever. Like there's games that I've seen on the schedule at Great Plains Game Fest that are 8-hour sessions, and I'm like,
Hmm.
if that's what you want to do, like I love that for you.
Yes.
It's not what I want to do, but that's okay.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a huge
And that's why we've
variety.
got 1,200 more for you.
Yeah, yeah. So, of course, I'm on the Wingspan train as well. It's just too good. Too
Yes.
much great replay value. But,
Yeah.
I didn't have, like, a friend who remembered it super well, so it was, like,
Mhm.
that initial playthrough where nobody knows how to play it, but they actually had a video, I think, and I was just like, "Oh, man, that helps so much too."
Yeah, that has become really popular, especially during COVID. Well, in general, COVID, the board game industry and like hobby industries in general like exploded. So there's actually like a ton more resources out there now.
Yes.
And one way that those like tabletop gamers who couldn't meet regularly, one way that they did stay involved with their fan base was like creating those learn to play videos. And I'd love to do something like that eventually in house as well, just
Yeah.
because we have a professional video production person on staff, and so it's like, well, we actually could do that pretty well, I think. And teaching games is something that we're really excited about. So I
Absolutely.
definitely agree that like having a video is helpful, just someone to explain it to you. And of course, like we're always able to explain games, but there are like certain games that we're better at explaining. So I will
Mhm.
say like Wingspan is one that like you catch Drake in the store, like he will teach you Wingspan.
Yes. And so you've mentioned some of the other key players at Mana Games. So can you explain more
Mhm.
about the origin story and the people behind the scenes?
For sure. I would say that so the top like key players I guess are myself and Sam, my co-owner. Sam and I have known each other since like my freshman year of high school, so over half my life at this point. He's a big hobby guy. He's a big board game guy, but he also got his master's in business from the university, so he had a lot of knowledge and experience when it comes to like building spreadsheets. He's great at Excel, boring things like that.
Boring and necessary.
Right, exactly. But when you're a startup business, things like market research, things like projections for growth, what are our targets here and how do we hit them? Those are really really critical pieces when you're trying to get funding, when you're trying to write a business plan, and when you're trying to really, decide on a location, things like that. And
Mhm.
so he was crucially important to that process. And, there's a reason that he is my business partner. I think for my part of this, I have managed cafes and kind of adjacent type businesses, counter service restaurants since I was in college, so since
Mhm.
2013. I really liked what I did. I think I have a really good handle on what cafe customers like and what they're expecting. I managed Starbucks for a long time, multiple locations. And so I became very familiar with a lot of different types of like coffee customers. I got really excited about learning about coffee, but also like food, counter service, restaurant, speed of service. Just I think I have a really good handle on how to manage people's expectations and make sure everyone leaves happy. And I think I have pretty good business sense just from doing. I learned via experience. I've never taken a business class, but I was directly responsible for my own labor percentages. I was responsible for my profit and loss, for my margins. I'm
Mhm.
monitoring, I had in previous positions, I've had bonuses that were reliant on me meeting goals and expectations in regards to sales. And so I felt like I had a really good handle on that portion of the business. And so Sam really was interested in bringing a board game cafe to Lincoln specifically.
Mhm.
So I looked into like this type of business. Like we went up to Spielbound in Omaha, which
Yeah.
is a super fun place. Caleb's got 2,000 plus games there, and I think most of them came from his personal collection. So
Oh my
he's a huge
gosh.
board gamer, and they've been around 9 years at this point, and so they did a lot for introducing the concept to Nebraska
Yeah.
as a whole. And so I looked into it, and I was like, I think that there is a great space in the market in Lincoln, and in the community in Lincoln for this exact business. I think that our powers combined, we can absolutely we can get that done. So outside of that, I kind of shopped the idea around with really a lot of my friends. I kind of talked to everybody that I knew, being like, well, what would you like to see, and what are you missing from like the gaming community? Like I wasn't a person that really went to Hobbytown before.
Mhm.
I didn't go to a lot of the game shops, hobby shops in town, just because that wasn't what I did. So Drake, my housemate, he and I lived together 12 years, and he is another major player in the Mana team. He has been a Yu-Gi-Oh player for a long time, so like I've been to Hobbytown many times with him, but like
Yeah.
that I didn't feel like those were my spaces, and so I was learning and talking to people and figuring out like, well, what are those spaces missing, or like what is something that we could add to the community that is not represented right now. And then my wife Jamie, she and I actually met at when I was managing the cafe at Barnes and Noble. She was my like kind of like my assistant manager,
Mm.
and so she was working in the same industry as me for a long time. I feel like she and I have very similar ideas about how we'd like things to be done. And especially in regards to like running a cafe, she is my right hand man in that case, and she is extremely competent. She's great with customers and she's great with other employees.
Mhm.
I let her do most of the training because me, I'm like the big boss, so I'm scary, right? Like I show up and people are like, "Oh, you don't want to mess up or whatever." Whereas like she is like extremely approachable,
Mhm.
extremely friendly. I think like training and procedures and kind of coaching, it's better received and more easily received when it comes from her. So she actually works as an underwriter for a credit card processing company. So she
Mhm.
works from home. She gets to sit down all day, and she was really missing the human interaction of being a barista.
Yeah.
And so she works a couple shifts, especially like busy cafe shifts, Friday nights, Saturday days, where I really need like a key point person who can handle a rush and who knows everything like the back of her hand. And so that is what her joy is. And she definitely would have told you before we opened Mana, like, I don't like games. I don't like playing
Mhm.
games. She was like, that's not what she's here for. She's here for the coffee. But,
Yeah.
she's really warmed up to playing games. um, And there are games that she really likes, and there are games that she won't touch.
Totally.
And she's a very important part of the cafe side of the business for me, especially. And then I would say the last like kind of like major player for us is Matthew. He's our store manager. He kind of hired himself. Like I guess I technically hired him, but when I was going to Great Plains Game Fest ahead of our Kickstarter, we were funded partially with crowdfunded money.
Mhm.
And so I was advertising that. I was getting the word out. I was introducing myself, meeting people. And he came and sought me out. He said, I heard what you're doing and I really am interested in helping you out. And I was like, yeah, that's great. And like, basically completely forgot about him, like I meet a lot of people and
Yeah,
especially like
yeah.
that weekend was full of like just like white guys named Matt, so like that's pretty like
That's a lot of the gaming community.
there's a lot of them. So, and he'll tell you that too. So, well, and at that point, like, I really wasn't in like hiring people stage. I wasn't in like making the menu stage. I was absolutely just like, get the money, get the crowdfunding going, like,
Yeah.
get the word out, like, figure out our lease, like, where are we going to be? Like, so I'm like several stages away still. And then when I finally arrived at like, I need a menu. Well, originally we were going to have alcohol because it's pretty common in this type of business.
Mhm.
Usually there is alcohol.
Right.
And when we eventually decided that that didn't mesh with what we wanted for our business, like it just wasn't kind of in the value system
Mhm.
of the type of space that we wanted to create. I remember that this guy like really was interested in creating a drink menu
Mhm.
because he used to be a bartender. And I was like, well, shoot, like I don't need alcohol anymore, but like having like a great, like a robust like mocktail menu would be awesome. And so I
Mhm.
reached out to him and I was like, hey, like we don't have alcohol anymore, but like, are you still interested in helping out? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. He came in, he helped build some of our tables and shelves initially. He came and like demonstrated a couple drinks and like fancy tricks and stuff like that. Definitely has a flair for the dramatic. He likes glittery things. He likes things that smoke and things that light up. He had done that, and then probably before I was ready to even think about hiring, he was like, hey, like I'd like to put in my resume for a potential hire. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I'm definitely not at that point yet, but I appreciate that. And then like 3 weeks later, he was like, okay, so when can I come in for an interview? It's like, I guess I come in. I don't know. I don't
Damn.
have any interview questions prepared. So he really went after it. He knew that this
Yeah.
was a company that he wanted to work with. He was really vibing with what we were doing, and he's been awesome. He has a great mix of his background is in culinary, so he does have a culinary degree, and so having a trained chef has been really helpful with obviously creating our menu.
Mhm.
And he's also like a huge nerd. He runs D&D for us, so he's like kind of like a perpetual DM. He's really into Magic the Gathering, which is a thing that we didn't really get into until about a year ago at my store. But like he was extremely important in like not only teaching me the game, which I now really enjoy and I'm pretty
Mhm.
active in, but I wasn't used to not knowing things about my business. And so it was like, well, if we're going to do this, like, I need someone to teach me. And so he was like a huge part of that. And so he just kind of like blends both sides of the business really well. And so that's kind of the five of us. Before we had our brick and mortar store, we ran gaming events. For the primary one that we did was at Cosmic Eye Brewery.
Mhm.
We ran like a weekly board game night or RPG night, or we actually did some video games and stuff too. During COVID, we did live streaming, like a lot of people did. We ran a Kickstarter campaign. We asked for 15,000, which is not anywhere close to how much money we need to open a new store, but
Mhm.
that's what Spielbound asked for, and it felt like a very like achievable target. And really like a crowdfunding campaign is less about like making money than it is about like generating excitement. It's really
Yeah.
marketing for your business, because we kind of pre-sold our membership program through the Kickstarter. So anyone who donated $25 got a 1 month membership for free. And so we ended up with like just over 200 people that we know are going to step foot in our space. Like we had a
Totally.
guaranteed customer base right away through that process. Like, so we didn't end up launching our Kickstarter campaign until September of 2021. We have been working on this since about 2018,
Oh.
and then COVID. We were like, well, we don't really know how to open a very social business like this in a safe way yet, so we had to kind of
Yeah.
spin our wheels for a while.
Yeah.
And then actually the space that we ended up being in came open because of the pandemic. So it all worked out for the best.
Mhm.
So our Kickstarter finished in October of 21. We signed the lease in November of 21, and we were actually open to the public. At least our gaming library portion was open at the end of December 21. So just before Christmas, we had a few like kind of soft opening days,
Mhm.
and then my cafe opened, food and drink portion opened on January 5th of 22.
Amazing. I love just hearing you talk about it as the mastermind. It's obvious that you made an amazing machine, and it's so exciting to hear about like putting all these people in place whose like skill sets just kind of seem
Yeah.
to like merge so well together.
If you asked anyone there, like if you asked anyone, like they would tell you, like I am the big boss.
Mhm.
Like I'm kind of the brains here of the operation, but I couldn't have done it without not only those four, but also like everyone else I know. I mean, I don't think there's anyone I didn't talk to. Sam Riggins, the owner of Cosmic Eye Brewery, which
Yes.
unfortunately just closed
Yes, it's extremely sad.
recently,
I'm not over it.
was super sad because that was like our first home. That was like where
Oh.
we started out. And but I knew him before he opened Cosmic Eye. He
Mhm.
was actually one of my regular customers
Oh, wow.
at Barnes and
Oh
Noble,
my
right? So I saw
gosh.
him, and he was
Oh,
telling me every day he used my cafe as he used the Barnes and Noble cafe as like his office,
oh
and
my
he was
gosh.
like telling me how he was going to open a brewery. And I told him what I was interested in doing, and he was like, well, I'd love to get some nerds in there like rolling dice and playing games. And so he gave me probably like the first piece of like business advice. He said, tell everybody what you want to do, because you don't know who's going to have something to offer, who can
Yes.
help, who has a connection, who has more advice for you. So he's like, tell everybody, and I really took that to heart, and I told everybody, and I
Amazing.
shopped it around with everybody, and I had several years to do that. We had been looking at a space in like February of 2020, so thankfully we didn't jump on that then.
Right.
But I had basically the entire like 2 years, 2020 and then 2021, to like really shape what we wanted this business to look like. And that happened because I asked everybody, like, well, what do you think of this ground plan? And what does this feel okay? Like, how much would you pay for this service? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, all the little details. Like, I built the whole like plan by like shopping it around with everybody. And like to this day, I really don't make any decision without at least shopping it to the four people on the management team
Totally.
with me. Like it's definitely a collaborative process,
Mhm.
because whereas like I do trust my own instincts, you have to. Because it's a lot of risk doing what
Mhm.
I do. So I do trust my own instincts, and I do trust that like I am very competent in the things that I have chosen to do. But also like these people give me much needed outside perspective. And
Yes.
what's great about, especially like I would call out like Sam and Matthew, I think are great like idea guys. They're like, what if we did whatever, and it's like, well, I'm a very practical minded person, so it's like, okay, well, I can't do that exactly like that, but what piece of that can I do, and how can
Totally.
we put it into motion? So I wouldn't say that like I do have a creative background, but I wouldn't say that I have a lot of like ideas on my own. I'm really like the get shit done person. Like I'll take your idea and I'll make it into a reality. And I think that's why, especially those two, like they're really great at coming up with ideas that then like Drake and Jamie and I can like take and shape and make into something like practical and feasible.
Oh, totally. And I mean, ideas and creativity are all about that context and all about like, okay, how are we going to actually
Hmm.
enact that? And also, I'm sorry, you made me very emotional because you have no idea how much Cosmic Eye means to me. And so it
Mhm.
just like really hit me in the feels when you're like giving those
Yeah,
flashbacks of all
yeah.
that. So whew, but that is like super cool to hear about that connection. So
Mhm. Yeah, I am incredibly grateful to Sam Riggins, and the space that he built, because
yes.
without him, I wouldn't have MySpace. So,
Oh yeah, and I've already mentioned Cosmic Eye multiple times on the podcast, and yeah, like I said,
yeah,
I don't know if I'll ever get over it. So, just such an amazing
yeah,
community
I feel
space.
the same.
What made you choose the name Mana Games?
Picking a name for a business is super hard.
I can imagine.
It's funny because I really never had another like alternative name. I had just started asking people like, what's a good name for a board game cafe? Just like popping it out there. And one of my friends, that I've known probably as long as Sam, I've known him since high school, and I wouldn't even really say that he's like a board gamer. Like
Mhm.
he played board games? Yes, he does video games. He does a little bit of like role playing games, but he was like, well, you could just call it Mana. And I was like, "Oh, well, that actually kind of works. I like the flow." So then from that point on it became like, "All right, do you have a suggestion that can beat this one?" Because like this is kind of my top.
Yeah.
I will say like not everyone was on board right away. It didn't vibe with everybody. And for me, like what I liked about the name was it's kind of like magical energy. I had
Yes.
just played I've played a lot of video games that use like a mana bar, or like
Mhm.
something to be like, this is like your energy that you have to like do magic stuff.
Yes.
And so I liked, because especially like we're a cafe, and so like our logo incorporates like a coffee cup, but also with this kind of like magical little swirl.
Magic potion.
Yeah, I thought it was like a really like elegant like option, because I'm like, I think this evokes exactly the feeling that I want, because it's kind of like energy and caffeine and stuff like that, but it's also like fantasy, and I think it like evokes ideas of something a little nerdier, than just like your
Totally.
average cafe. I ended up going with Mana Games. So like our LLC is like Mana Games LLC. So like whereas Mana Games Cafe is my board game cafe, I wanted it to be open enough that we could, eventually publish games if that's what we're into.
Mm.
I can use Mana Games on my live stream. Like it's more of like the entity is like Mana Games.
Totally.
We do games and we
Yes.
have energy,
Mhm.
caffeine, beverages, things like that. And so I didn't want like the name necessarily tied with the cafe portion, because I wanted our business to be able to grow into more than that. But I really vibed with it. I thought it was, clean. I thought it made sense. Of course, there's people who are like, oh, like manna from heaven. And I'm like, wow, that's like not spelled the same way. And
Yeah,
like,
not exactly.
it's been like a non issue.
That's good. That's good.
It's funny because when we opened, we didn't do Magic the Gathering, which like mana is like a main thing in Magic the
Mhm.
Gathering.
Mhm.
And so some people were confused, like, oh, why don't you do Magic because your name is Mana? I was like, well,
Mhm.
mana is used like in a lot of other places too.
Yeah, yeah,
We
totally.
do Magic now, so no worries.
Yeah, no, that's totally valid.
Yeah, yeah. So I've always thought it was the right choice. As soon as I heard it, I was like, shout out to Chris, like, good job, buddy.
Oh, I totally agree. I think it's perfect. I guess, like, I especially think of it as, like, a replenishing life
Yeah,
force.
exactly. Yeah.
Kind
Mhm.
of this, like, magical, but sort of, like, difficult to define, substance almost.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, with the vibe you guys create, the atmosphere, and all the community
Mhm.
that you build, it's just a really perfect descriptor.
Thank you. I'm glad it resonates with you.
Yes, yes, definitely. And you also mentioned that there are all these different things that you want to do. I mean, you're already doing all these different kinds of events. I guess one of the things I wanted to ask about was like the local game designer community, and yeah,
Yeah.
like how has that been? That just seems like such a unique facet.
Aaron Kemkis is my contact for the group that meets at Mana. They meet every other Thursday. He's a very sweet guy. He is definitely very humble, but I will brag on him a little bit because he's always up for some kind of board game design award. You know, every time I
Oh
hear
my
from him, he's like,
gosh.
"Oh, I'm going to, France or whatever," but he's like,
What?
he's super humble about it. He's a very talented designer, and really everyone in the group is, but he had reached out to me. I had met him through the Great Plains Game Festival. He said that they had been his group of people who are interested in playtesting games and designing games. They're meeting at Hy-Vee, which is random. The Hy-Vee like closes at, the like cafe area closes at like 8, and they like weren't super like thrilled about this like gamer group being there like loud and whatever. And
Okay.
so he was like, "Oh, do you think that like your store would be like a good place for us?" And I was like, "I mean, it's definitely better than the Hy-Vee, I think." And so he had asked if he could kind of move his regular meeting, just with these people that he had met, and they had kind of formed this group together. And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely, you can meet here. Like, would you be open to us like putting it on our calendar so that way people know that like we're doing this and we're hosting this, and potentially you can meet other people?" And he was like, "Yeah, for sure." Aaron's a really cool guy. He's helped. We ran there's actually a little board game design badge in the Girl Scout program.
Oh,
And so he helps me run a little board game design workshop for some young girls.
I love
It was
that.
like the brownie age even, so, like,
Wow.
1st graders, come in and make little, like, zombie llama games and whatever, I don't know. He and the other guys that kinda started that group, they're very good at playtesting, and it is a skill, right? Because,
Right.
like, they'll playtest your game, and they'll be able to give you, like, super constructive feedback on what things might be confusing, or like what things could be improved, while still being like overwhelmingly
Mhm.
positive. Like, they're super friendly, all of them
Mhm.
are. I've really loved hosting them, and there are some like kind of regular customers that have now like kind of hopped into that. And I don't know if so I would say like there are more local designers than you think. We've got
Yeah.
3 locally designed games like on our shelf right now.
Oh my
There are
gosh.
several other locally designed games that we have in the library that we don't have for sale
Uh-huh.
anymore, just because like printing costs, especially when you're independent, are it's pretty hard to justify like an order of 100 games. And so
Absolutely.
unfortunately, there's a lot of locally designed games that are excellent, that we do have for play that we wish we could sell, but
Mhm.
they just like aren't in print right now. I'm excited to see what else comes out of that group.
Yeah.
We have 3 like for sale right now, so there's a lot of talent out there, even just in Lincoln, so it's really cool.
Yeah, I love that you guys get to serve as an incubator for that. That's just so cool
Mhm.
and
I think so
unique.
too. I'm very proud of all of them when I hear,
Mm.
oh, like one's getting published. I know Aaron's got at least one that is like in the publishing process right now.
Wow.
He's got a couple others that are in the pipeline. So yeah, I mean, he's got
Dang.
so many. I feel like every time I hear about a game that he's got, oh, this one's up for an award, it's like I haven't even heard of that one. Where did this one come from? He's got tons of them.
Dang. He's just super prolific when it comes to designing games, I guess.
No, for real, yeah. And he's
So
also just like
amazing.
the sweetest guy
Yeah. Well, and then I
ever.
also have to bring up that not only are you like a supporter to the game designers, but also just artists in general, because you have a massive shelf full of local makers,
Yeah.
artists, like all of these different things. That's another amazing facet of Mana.
Yeah, I've been really excited about that. And I can't really remember like how we decided, or like who like originally suggested that we open up our shelves to local
Hmm.
artists. I am really grateful that we did. I know that when Indigo Bridge was there, like I don't know if it was necessarily, I guess it was maybe between Indigo Bridge closed. It was open for quite a while before we came in, but they did do some like kind of craft fair pop-ups in that
Mm.
space,
Hmm.
before we came in. That is a really cool way to utilize the space. And our focus, at the cafe is definitely not on retail. We do have some retail. We try to focus on new games, maybe
Hmm.
like, yeah, those Kickstarter games that are really exciting, things that are brand new,
Totally.
or things that are local. We try to be really like kind of focused and curated on what we sell. For us, especially like as a brand new business, day one, I think there was like one game on the shelf for sale. like we really didn't have anything, you know?
Yeah,
And it
yeah.
was just like a expanse of empty shelves, and we're like, well, we got to fill this, but like we don't have any money, you know, like we just
Right.
opened a whole store, like we don't have any money to bring in a ton of retail. We were like, well, why don't we fill these shelves with local craftsmen, you know, people who are selling.
Totally.
We try to keep it in rotation. Sam kind of manages our consignment program. You
Mhm.
know, we try not to have like two people making the same type of thing at the
Mhm.
same time. You know, we want to give lots of people an opportunity, and we have tons of requests all the time for new artists. And so we've started building in like kind of like a 3 month like rotation system. We don't charge like a booth fee or anything like that, or like a shelf fee.
Yeah.
We take up a percentage of their sales. In my opinion, it makes sure that it keeps more money like in the artist's pocket, and also it helps. It benefits those people that maybe have like slower moving artwork. So
Right.
I do think it is a little bit easier for newer artists to jump in.
Yeah, yeah. Well, firstly, it's just like such a great partnership for both of y'all. And secondly, as like, somebody coming in, like walking in the doors and you just see all of this original art and it's usually nerdy and like you said, there's a whole
Yeah,
variety. It's just so like welcoming and sets the tone in such a great way. So yeah, that's always something I've been a huge fan
yeah,
of.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, and then the drink menu is another thing I wanted to ask about because you have the barista background. So,
Yeah.
what are some of the specialty drinks that have been in the rotation lately? Do you have a favorite right now? Like, yeah, give me all the deeds.
We're kind of winding down our spring menu. We're gonna have our summer menu up here soon. We have like our kind of staples. Our alchemist tea has been on the menu since day one. And that's always like our top seller every month.
Hmm.
It's super fun, right? It has the like glittery citric acid simple syrup like vial on the side, so you pour it in,
Yeah,
changes colors. It's very fun. Like our potions are really popular, like our mana potions, like obviously like I don't know, you gotta have a mana potion if you're called
totally.
mana, like um but with our like our seasonal menus, we do like to kind of explore just different, like maybe like kind of some unusual flavors. We do like to offer things that are just a little outside the box. Matthew, my store manager, really likes to play around with flavor, and he's got great instinct for flavor.
Hmm.
So right now on our spring menu that we're winding down, we have like a walnut Angostura latte. So like
Hmm.
Angostura bitters, or like what you put in like an old fashioned,
Yep.
if that
Yep.
gives you an idea of flavor. And walnut, actually, because we ended up with my wife's sister ended up with like just a lot of free walnuts. And
Oh,
so she was like, do you want like 60 pounds of walnuts? And I was like, yeah, all right. Um,
amazing.
we actually do craft some of our syrups in house, and so crafting like a walnut Angostura syrup was something that we were excited to try out. And
That's
I like
amazing.
that one a lot because it's a little bit less like overwhelmingly sweet. You know, it's got great
Mhm.
flavor, but it's not overly
Yeah.
sweet. We have the Galaxy Fizz right now, which is like an Italian soda or energy elixir, and of course it has
Mhm.
edible glitter in it. Like if it doesn't have edible glitter in it, like Matthew's not excited about it. So we really just gotta put the glitter
You
in
know,
it.
I've seen a photo recently and it looks just
Yes,
stunning. I mean, I
yes,
think
it's fun.
I think his instincts are spot on there. But yeah, no, the homemade syrup sounds so amazing. I love that you just kind of took like, like the TV show Chopped where it's like, here's an
Yeah,
ingredient and you just made something
literally.
amazing out of
What are
it.
we gonna do with 60 pounds of walnuts? Okay,
Yep.
well, let's figure it out. And we actually already have the Angostura bitters for. We use them in one of the potions, in the Blight potion, and so
Amazing.
we were like, well, we can combine these. And coming up for summer, well, and the other thing that we finally did this spring, I feel like adding smoothies to the menu has been
Mhm.
on my to-do list for like 2 years, and I just like couldn't come up with. I'm a big like I'm a huge stickler for like consistency in my product,
Mhm.
right? If it's not like a process that is easy to learn for my baristas and it's not a product that comes out in a consistent fashion, I don't want it. Like I can't do
Yeah.
that, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean that a lot of that is like from my Starbucks background
Mhm.
because like, the reason that Starbucks is as big as it is, the reason that McDonald's is as big as it is not necessarily because they have the best quality out there, but because they deliver consistently to customers.
Right.
Every time you go,
Yeah.
you get the same thing. You know, I think
Totally.
everyone knows. I think everyone has probably like ordered something at Dunkin' Donuts and like just rolled the dice hoping that it was anywhere close to what you ordered, you know? And like it's just it is what it is, you know, but Starbucks is very, very diligent about like having processes for everything. And like I'm on the autism spectrum, so like having a process is like necessary for me.
Mhm.
Like I need to have the rules laid
Yeah.
out. And
Yeah.
so I'm very particular about how I like things done. Like smoothies were just like kind of just a thorn in my side for a long time
Mhm.
because people were asking for them, they wanted them. I heard that, I see that, but like there's so many ways to make them complicated. There's so many. I don't want to
Totally.
add like 10 ingredients to my menu or to my back room. I mean, we don't have a lot of space. So, like,
Yep.
finally, like, I got them up there. They only come in one size, they only come in two flavors. There's like no add ons really. I'm like, here you go, like, meeting a need.
Yes. I mean, I just love the menu is so creative, it's, like, nerd themed, and also I just think it's super important because you're in the Haymarket, there's not that many places in the Haymarket you can go if you
Yeah,
don't really want to have alcohol. I think that there's starting to be
right.
more awareness and more options,
Definitely.
but it's pretty hit or miss, so I think just the fact that you're so dedicated is great.
Yeah, really no places for yeah, because we do get a lot of like to your point, like a big portion of our business obviously is nights and weekends, gamers coming in to play games, right? And they buy
Yeah.
food and drink while they're there. Food and drink is 60% of my overall revenue. So it's
Mhm.
a majority of my business. But we can't discount the 10 to 5, you know, the lunch and the downtown crowd, the people who come into work in my building or that come into work in my cafe. Like
Mhm.
that's not a majority of our business, but it is a significant part of our business. And especially like those farmers markets mornings, like we're a
Mhm.
cafe during 8 to noon on Saturday mornings.
Totally.
We're not really a board game store at that time.
Yeah.
So there are hardly any places that are open late that don't have alcohol, especially not in our area. And there really aren't a lot of like kind of robust lunch options that are quick. We have a
Mhm.
lot of excellent local restaurants down there, but they're sit down restaurants, you know. And
Mhm.
I think of us more as like a Panera, you know. It's like we're
Mhm.
kind of like a fast casual in that way.
Yeah.
Is how I think of our menu. So I think that our menu and the speed at which we deliver that menu, I think is definitely doing that for the Haymarket.
Yeah, and what's that been like to be in that building? It's so iconic to the Haymarket. I would argue it's almost even like the center point in some ways.
It is, you know, it is really like a cornerstone of the Haymarket for sure because you've got your P Street and like 7th Street like come to a point right there, and
True.
especially as the Haymarket kind of expands like out behind us towards like the Steelworks building, which I believe there are plans to do that. Like we
Mhm.
really will become like the center of that space. And you know, I'll be honest, we pay a lot to be in that building. It is
Mhm.
not cheap to be in the Haymarket, but we have the benefit of excellent neighbors. We have Avanacone, which when we were brand new, like having Avanacone in our same building was huge for us because you know everyone's coming there. They're coming for ice cream. They poke their head in, hey, what's this? Oh, it's not the bookstore anymore. What's going on? You know, and like
Yeah.
3 years later, people are still asking us, "Oh, you're
Mm.
not the bookstore anymore." So like, you know,
Yeah.
I guess that's the memory is long,
How
but
it goes. Yep.
yeah, like especially when we were brand new, like getting eyes on our business, it was really important that we had a huge like Lincoln iconic place like Ivanacone in there. We also have the Tada Theater upstairs, so that brings in like a very different crowd.
Mm.
We've got Red Quill Tattoo up there.
Mhm.
Those guys are awesome. They're great to have. The owner of Red Quill kind of put in a good word for us when we were trying to get this lease.
Oh, that's awesome.
They were really like, oh, we think this will add a lot to the culture of our building. And
Yes.
I love being in the Haymarket. The main complaint that we hear, of course, is parking.
Mhm.
In my opinion, we have some of the best parking in the Haymarket, because we have a lot right next to us. We have 3 garages right next to us. And yes, they cost money, but like my family's from Chicago. So I'm like, I don't know, $1 an hour for parking doesn't really fuss me that much. But I know
Right.
that Lincoln has a very different idea of what constitutes great parking, and that was like the main like con, I would say, of our space when we were determining if that was the right move for us
Mhm.
as a brand new business. Like being in such a central, well seen, well traveled place has been really beneficial. And truthfully, as far as the physical location goes, like even before COVID, like I was always like that Indigo Bridge spot is perfect for me. Like
Mhm.
I can see my business in there. I like that it's kind of visually delineated where like here's my cafe and retail. Okay, down here you have to pay a day pass to be there. Like I
Totally.
like all of those aspects of the building.
Mhm.
And so when it came open, I was like, well, I can't move in there right now. It's a pandemic. If it's still open, I think we should go for it. And so when we hit like about August of 21, I called Sam in like the middle of the workday, really, and I was like, I think we have to go for it. Like it's scary, it's a risk to take a space that costs this much. As a brand new business, like we really got to roll the dice, and
Absolutely.
it was a risk. I mean, everything to do with business is a risk, and
Mhm.
I said I think that I will not be happy if we don't give it a shot.
Mhm.
I think that this is the right space for us, and I think that we got to try and make it work. And so we have been very grateful to be there for almost 3 years now, and
Yes.
I agree with myself that it was the right call.
That makes me so happy.
Yeah, yeah, and like I don't want to say that I didn't have anyone being like, "Don't do that. You're crazy
Mhm.
for doing that." And I was like, well, and I hear that. I think that's valuable advice. I'm glad that we went for it anyway. Our first year, full year in business, we made a lot more money than we had anticipated to make in
Mhm.
like total revenue. And then our second full year in business, we grew by 47%, which is insane. That's a
Wow.
lot of money.
Yeah.
And so we are on track to gain about 22% over that this third year. These types of businesses, and by that I mean like a cafe or even like retail spaces, they tend to plateau in like their sixth or seventh month. Like, I'll be honest, like, we really haven't plateaued at all. We have continued to grow. Not to say that there's never been a month that was slightly less than the month before, but overall, like our monthly memberships, we have grown always. We have over 300 members now, which is incredible. We retained something like 80 of those 200 initial members from our Kickstarter are still members
Oh,
now, which is like a crazy good retention.
yeah.
Anyone in marketing can tell you that. So I
Totally.
think, if anything, that's a testament to the fact that the community wanted us and was ready for us. So,
Yes. Well, you've been super busy. This episode will come out in July, but we're currently recording in Pride Month, which is awesome.
yay!
And you also kind of saved the day for Star City Pride.
I was super happy, but I was actually out of town for Pride weekend, which made me so sad.
Mm.
But I was really glad that Baby Girl, who was the coordinating events for Star City Pride this year, reached out to me and said, "Hey, people are well." When I had seen that the festival was closed early and then canceled, I was like,
Mhm.
my first concern was the vendors, like,
Yeah.
that's something that can't easily replace. There wasn't a solution, and there still really isn't a solution for all those people who weren't able to make money that weekend. And so
Right.
I'm working with Star City Pride to try and create an opportunity for those people to make some money
Mhm.
back, because I just know how hard it is as a small business owner, or even just as a person who's trying to make a living.
Yeah.
I know how hard it is when you're counting on making that much money in a weekend and you make nothing. So
Mhm.
that is an ongoing process. But I had reached out to her and I had said, I know that your life is crazy right now, but if there's anything that I can do to help you or help these people who were counting on that income, like, please let me know. And she was like, actually, like, a lot of people are expressing disappointment that even though we're so happy and thrilled that Das House was able to accommodate these performers, that there was nowhere for kids to go or
Mhm.
minors even to go after 6
Yep.
p.m.
Yep.
That was something that was really bumming people out, and that makes total sense. I know Brian really well, the owner at Das House. Actually, I worked with him at the university when I was in college, so he and I are good friends, and I love Das House. I'm at Das House every weekend,
Mhm.
so I'm super thrilled that they were able to accommodate performers. And I was like, absolutely, like, I will honor any pride ticket at my space. Absolutely, because we are a family friendly, inclusive indoor activity. Like, it's not the same as being at Pride, and it's hard that it didn't go the way that we anticipated. But
Yes.
we actually. So I wasn't there. I was literally in Red Cloud, Nebraska,
Oh,
and
wow.
we had the busiest day that we've ever had
I believe it.
in 2.5 years of being in business, and, like, we made the most money by a lot we've ever made in one day, and that's including the fact that we let 64 people in for free. Like,
Wow.
we
Yeah.
honored their passes instead of charging admission like we usually have a day pass. Like, we honored that 64 people, actually 68 people, because I let in 3 after we did the tally. So 68 people came in and took
Dang.
advantage of that offer, and we still made that much money without charging any of them admission. So it was a very packed,
Incredible.
very busy day. Super grateful to my staff and super grateful to everyone who was very patient with my staff while they were very busy. I am queer. I am very active in the LGBT community in town, because that's my community. Those are my people. And it was like, it just, duh, makes sense. It was like,
Yeah.
please come to us, and we're happy to welcome you in. So I'm really glad that even though that weekend did not go the way that anyone planned, that we were able to kind of make the best of it.
Oh, yeah, and again, just another way that you're providing community because Panic Bar closed a few years ago.
I
That's been really
know
sad.
it has been, especially for people like me. I don't like loud bars and stuff. Like, I go to
Mhm.
Das House. I do. I go to Das House every weekend if I can. I love the people, and but I'm an inside kind of person. I'm
Mhm.
a stay at home,
Yeah.
quiet kind of person. So I miss Panic Bar a lot for that reason.
Mhm. I know. I do too. Anything else that you wanted to add before we start to wrap this up?
I think, like, touching on just like the LGBT community in general and the space that, like, I've created and that we've created. When we were initially opening this business, and just kind of gestating the idea of this business, I wanted this place to be inclusive without being exclusive.
Mhm.
I didn't want it to be like a gay place. Like,
Mhm.
it's not just for queer people. I really wanted it to be a space that anyone can come to, and I will say, like, really everyone does come to. Like, we have all
Mhm.
kinds of people, but I wanted to make it very clear that, like, like, Sam is like our token straight guy, but, like, he is a huge ally. Of course, honestly, he's the one who's like, ordered more pride flags. He's the one who hung them all up, not
Love
me.
it.
Like,
Aw.
he's like he's like, order the Juneteenth flags so they're here on time. Like, he is a huge ally to the community. What I was seeing with gaming spaces, especially in hobby spaces, is that there were people that did not feel like they belonged in those spaces, including
Yep.
myself.
Yep.
When I went to Hobby Town while Drake was playing Yu-Gi-Oh, I didn't see anyone. Not, I didn't even see any women. Like, I didn't see anyone
Mhm.
who wasn't just a man. And
Right.
predominantly white men in Nebraska and in Lincoln. And so I was like, especially like when I started to learn Magic at the beginning of last year, I would go to Hobbytown and play, and, like, I might even go tonight, and I go to the other hobby stores all the time. Like those are all my buddies. It's really it's a nice like community that we have. But like it's definitely not like a competition. But like I was like, where are the girls? Like, do girls gotta play Magic, right? Like, where are they? And the answer is
Yeah.
yes, they do, and they are out there. And not knocking anybody else in town or their player bases because, like I said, I play at Hobby Town. I play at Collective. I have not played at Rainbow, but I love the people at Rainbow. So I go to those spaces regularly. I think they all have different player bases. They have a different role in the community. And so I'm really happy that we have in our board games and role playing games and card games, we have just kind of created a space for our own player base without really taking
Totally.
away from anyone else. Something that's really cool about all of the game stores in town is like we're all kind of buddies.
Yay.
Greg, who runs the Warhammer store, comes and plays at our store when his store is closed. I spend my days off at Hobby Town and a Collective.
Yeah.
Like so we're all cool. We're all friends, and I think it's because we all offer something really like unique.
Absolutely.
And so I'm really happy that it kind of worked out the way that I wanted, where
Hmm.
we get plenty of those people that play at Hobby Town. We get plenty of those people who play at Collective, and even like people who play at Gauntlet. We get all of those players. We get randos that walked in off the street and were like, "What is this?" And we get tons of like queer people. We get tons of like women. We get children, people that just like don't feel at home or necessarily as welcome at those other spaces come and feel welcome and at home in our space. And that's all that I wanted. I didn't want it to be like, oh, you can't come here if you're straight. Like we have lots of straight people,
Yes.
but it is a safe space for those friends as well. And like recently we had some like harassment because of our drag shows. Unfortunately, like I kind of anticipated eventually we would get
Hmm.
some conservatives mad about that. I'm kind of surprised it took as long as it did. It's like I don't know, the community, the love is much louder than the hate for sure.
Hell
And
yes.
if anything, it just made me like more sure that we're doing the right thing and we're doing good
Oh my
things.
gosh. Yeah.
The drag community is something that I didn't know anything about. I wasn't the type like I'm in my 30s. I'm not the type of queer person that goes out to drag shows, or I
Hmm.
wasn't, and now I
Hmm.
do.
Hmm.
So I have met so many amazing people from hosting drag shows in my space. I mean, I've met people that, we had to do a GoFundMe at the end of last year to kind of get ahead of some like pretty predatory loans that we were dealing with.
Yeah, I remember
And
that.
it was really hard to ask for help, especially because I didn't want people to think that we were like doing badly. Actually, my business is doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like we were in a tough spot. It's really hard. I think
Totally.
anyone knows it's hard to ask for help because you're worried it's going to reflect negatively on
Hmm.
you or like I've done something wrong. But all that happened was that literally like 200 drag queens like shared my stuff so much that we made a bunch of money in like 8 hours. Like
Yes.
the drag community kept my business in business,
Love
period.
that.
Like,
Oh, I love that
and
so much.
so, it's just like, and those are the people and the connections that I've met by opening up my space to that kind of event. And,
Yeah.
community is a huge like buzzword, but it's also just like, it's accurate. And I'm really happy that, how it's shaped up.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And also when you're just talking about creating this space where everybody's welcomed, I think that also can kind of tie back to your name because it's like, it's a place where anybody can recharge, do the long rest, whatever
Yeah.
terminology you want to use.
Mhm.
So yeah, you're just absolutely killing it. And I am just so happy
Thank
that
you.
it exists in the place where I live. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So, to wrap up, a little Nerdlandia tradition that I have really enjoyed having this season is the current favorites, and we just share what we're kind of obsessed with right now. What's your favorite thing in the moment?
So I had to get into Lorcana, which is the Disney card game, kind of like Magic.
Mhm.
And I thought it was gonna be dumb, right? It was like I don't need this. I already play Magic, like it's some Disney, like like baby Magic. Actually, it's a very thoughtfully designed game. It has some unique mechanics that I enjoy. I think it
Yeah.
does have some picking power where like some other games like I'm not super sure are ever gonna be able to tangle with like Magic the Gathering, but like I think
Hmm.
Lorcana is a super like easy to access type of card game. So people who maybe like their partners play Magic, but they're like, I don't know if that's for me. Like this is a great way to get into card games. I'm pretty good at it because I play Magic, and so that feels
Hmm.
good to like win. And so we just started running organized play matches for Lorcana like last week, and I'm having a ton of fun with that. And then I also, what else am I doing? I don't have a lot of free time, as you can probably
Fair.
imagine. I did just start. Stephen King has a new short story book called "You Like It
Ooh,
Darker." I just started that on Audible, and that's
nice.
read by Will Patton. He read the Raven Cycle books, Maggie
Mm,
Stiefvater. Listening to his voice read an audiobook is literally like hanging out with an old friend. Like I love
incredible.
the way that he
Uh,
reads. I loved the Raven Cycle books are amazing, but like Will Patton made them like extra amazing. And I've gotten into
yeah.
audiobooks in my adult life because I don't have time to sit down and read paper books. I am just like over the moon. I didn't even know he read it. I just like hit play and I was like, oh my gosh, it's Will Patton. I'm so excited.
Yes.
So and I love King's short story collections are always great. So that's the exciting thing that I started today.
Oh man, yeah, an audiobook read by an amazing narrator. There's not very many things in life that are more delightful.
I think
So,
it really I think it really makes the book sometimes. Like, there are books where
yeah,
I might have put it down and not finished it, but it had an excellent reader, so I kept going. Like,
exactly.
it took me a while to figure out the right amount of, like, using my brain. I play, like, Candy Crush or something on my
Mm,
phone while I listen to
mhm.
the audiobook, because if I don't, like, look at anything, then I'm like, I don't know, I can't focus on the audiobook,
Yeah,
and so it took me a while to figure out like what tasks can I do while I listen to audiobook?
exactly.
Like washing dishes or laundry or driving.
Mhm.
So I've gotten really back into reading thanks to Libby. You can rent books from the library,
Libby is the best.
audiobooks from the library, as well as Audible. So yeah, I just like it turned it on and I heard his voice. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy.
Incredible. Okay, so my favorite thing at the moment, it's kombucha. So this is fermented felon, and it's out of
Okay,
Omaha. I want to say it's Omaha area, but I am not
sure,
positive.
yeah.
But it's a guy who started his own company after like he's formerly incarcerated. He like shares his whole story on the website, and
Oh wow.
so he got like a second chance through. I think it's called like the Rise program or something like that. And so he has this business, and
Mhm.
I think then he also supports the Rise business, or sorry, the Rise organization. It's just a great product. But then when I like heard about the story, I liked it even more.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I haven't had much kombucha. It's like sometimes I've had ones that I like.
Understandable.
I've had ones that
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if I liked that. I'm not
No,
sure.
I get it. It's a little acquired. I totally understand. This
Yeah.
one was ginger. It was excellent. Just kind of perfect. Yes, again, thank you so much for spending so much time with me. Thanks so much for
Yeah,
sharing all your thoughts. It was amazing to hear even more about mana.
absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me. This was fun.
My nerdy heart is so full after that conversation. It was such a treat to get a peek behind the curtain of what makes mana games work. If you live nearby or are visiting for a weekend, I really hope you stop by for games, tasty food and drink, fun events, and everything else they have to offer. And just like that, we are done with season 1. But you can keep the good vibes flowing all summer long with Choose Your Own Adventure. It's a creative challenge I devised for us to keep trying new things, being creative, and more. If you complete 10 side quests, I'll even give you a free nerd pin that I designed. You can learn more in the show notes or by connecting on social media. Nerdlandia is hosted, produced, and edited by Emily Case Buskirk. Theme song and ending credit music by Keith West. Cover art by Ellen Stubbings. Additional music by Melody Ayers Griffiths from Pixabay. I'm like you. I just love, coffee, pretty plain, and
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't like things too sugary sometimes. But then I also love,
Mhm.
like, I don't know, I love really sweet desserts sometimes too. So I can't
Yeah.
like
My
pretend
wife's
I have a
the same.
super sophisticated palate.
Yeah.
So
I'm like I'm like, I could eat like savory food, especially like potatoes, cheese, like salty snacks. Like, I'm good with all that. I'm like, I get capped out on sugar pretty quick, and my wife is the opposite, you know?
Yeah.
She'll like, we just eat any sweets all the time. We always have cookies in the house, and she, you know, like, so she eats enough sweets for both of us.
Amazing.